My colleagues may recall that when we took this legislation up, that one of the major provisions that we were dealing with was the charge for credit cards. And the committee at that time had recommended that we come forward with a 5% cap on credit card charges, which was similar to what other jurisdictions had done. At the dais, with the best of intentions, the council heard a proposal to say, gee, what we really ought to do is just have 1% over costs. And the motivation behind that was the notion that we could get below 5%.
These drivers are being treated as contract employees. They're not employees of the company. They're independent, private contractors. Why a private contractor has to accept payment through the non-employer, because this is not an employee-employer relationship, is beyond me. And if the drivers have a way of collecting their own money, they ought to be able to do it. I don't agree with offering both forms of payment unless you allow the drivers to put a surcharge on Barwood for the amount that Barwood dings out of their payment if Barwood is the paying agency. I mean, it makes no sense to say if you pick Barwood, now Barwood gets to chip away at your income for the ride you provided, and the drivers take the hit on that. And I don't know, frankly, how you even legitimately offer both to somebody. Is Barwood going to be running ads on the little screens saying your driver's square is not secure, please don't use, I mean, there's no control over this. So from my point of view, we should just let the drivers accept payment. They should be able to figure out how they're going to deal with call and ride. We have some comments from people who've talked with folks in D.C. that indicate that Verifone charges are somewhat less than what Barwood charges. And so if Barwood wanted to be competitive in the marketplace, and I love to be able to say that, if they want to be competitive, then they could simply drop their fees to the driver to the same fee that the driver would get if they leased the stuff directly from the company, and they could spare themselves a lot of pain. But if Barwood's going to insist on charging more than what the drivers can get the same service for, that seems unfair unless you're going to allow the drivers to go chip back at Barwood and get the money back, or any of the other cab companies, not just Barwood. So I'm not in favor of a two payment system unless the drivers are made whole for anybody using the Barwood system. The best way to keep business is to be competitive. If you have an uncompetitive price, you lose business and you pay the consequences. So that seems like a choice the owner has to make, and they live with whatever choice they make.
We're going to go for a roll call vote, Madam Clerk.
Mr. Elrich?
Yes.
Mr. Elrich votes yes. Mr. Hucker? Yes. Mr. Hucker votes yes. Mr. Rice?
Yes.
Mr. Rice votes yes. Mr. Leventhal?
Yes.
Mr. Leventhal votes yes. Mr. Reamer? Yes. Mr. Reamer votes yes. Ms. Navarro? Ms. Navarro votes yes. Mr. Katz?
Yes.
Mr. Katz votes yes. Mr. Berliner?
Yes.
Mr. Berliner votes yes. Ms. Floreen?
Yes. Bill 5315 passes.